Hello and welcome to the Badlands tutorial. And this is Badlands 5v5, and I'm going to explain you the build order of the flying spot. I have recorded multiple Badlands videos before. Badlands was part of the exotic build order video for the dual land setup and the fast hydro. And then there were two videos that were kind of a mix between a tutorial and a replay review. And these were quite unstructured, long, and had way too much information to memorize everything. So this video is going to be short and simple and just about the build order, because trust me, the build order is complicated enough as it is. So please pay attention. You start with your land factory, you build it adjacent to a max, and it cannot be too far away from this rock field, because your third engineer is going to reclaim these rocks. So make sure it's close to this rock field, but it is not on the way to this rock field, because your ACU is going to build these two power generators and two mixers, and then the ACU goes to this side and builds these factories on top of the plateau over the cliff. Right? This is a very steep cliff, and the build range is ranging over this plateau, and you want to make use of it. But if your factory is in between your ACU and this plateau, then the ACU will get stuck or delayed or whatever, right? And you don't want this. The ACU has to arrive here early. What does your factory build? It builds one engineer, and this engineer is building the two mexes on the side of the hydro. So if your ACU has built these two mexes and the engineer needs to build these two, the build is not going to work. So it's really important that you don't mess up. The second unit your factory builds is a light assault bot, and that's going for the enemy hydro. On the 5v5 version of this map, the two flank spots are close to each other, so this lab is going to deal terrible damage to the opponent. It can kill both hydro building engineers, and some people even try to build the hydro with 3 engineers. This can kill all, and this is really devastating. So make sure you always have it. Engineer number 2 is assisting this engineer, building hydro, 4 power generators, air factory, ring of power generators. Engineer number 3 is reclaiming. This is the one that's going here, and this is the reason why the factory is not further away or closer to the hydro or whatever. Because the timing matters, the engineer has to arrive quickly. And a few seconds before now, you could see me switching reclaim orders between rocks and trees, pretty wildly. This is because I reclaim whatever I need, and usually it's both my mass and my power that's empty, but one of them is a little more empty than the other. So I'm using manual reclaim until the eco is stable, and always switch from trees to rocks depending on what I need. This is the engineer I'm going to be babysitting. Engineer number 4 is the one that has an attack order over here and grabs some rocks. This is undefended, and since your lab already attacked, you're probably going to provoke some attack. But usually your middle player should be protecting this engineer, either with tanks or with his ACU. Engineer number 5 is the one that travels here, to these two mixers, and it's grabbing some rocks. There are trees and rocks, and you just want the rocks. So use manual reclaim. And unit number 5 is going to be this scout. And this scout is going to be super important, because you place it here and it's going to give you intel over the plateau. Make sure not to lose the scout. If the enemy is building combat units on top of the plateau and they somehow manage to kill the scout down there, you're going to run into trouble as an Aeon player. Because this version of the build doesn't plan in a radar. You don't have eco for this radar, in fact. So the scout is your only intel. Make sure not to lose it. There is a backup scout, but you still shouldn't lose it, because there is a scout going to be needed for these two tanks. Right? So these two tanks are in the center in case anything tries to raid you, and you're building a wall to channel some of the enemy units, if there are any, into your middle player space, because you're going to gun upgrade from a safe position, and you are going to fight very plateau-centric. You could see there are 3 land factories on top of the plateau, all built by this ACU, in between land factory number 2 and land factory number 3, the ACU picked up some rocks in order to not mass stall. And these 3 land factories come at a very early timing, and with good tank micro, you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to win the plateau with this, especially against people who don't prioritize it as much. Now, the ACU is moving a bit further into the base. That's because you want to bring it into a position where it can easily upgrade and be assisted by engineers. I'm starting the gun upgrade. I'm going to pause the air factory or switch it to engineers. And the power spam is going to stop because power also costs power, and I want the power for the gun upgrade instead. Now, so far I've only been building tanks, but later I'll switch into anti-air because I'm going to use the assumption that we are going to win the plateau, and if there are tanks already, you don't need more. You need some anti-air instead to make sure he doesn't drop or bomb, and then you need engineers. This build order is basically, well, a land, a triple land on the plateau, and a late air, but the late air is not too late, right? The opponent is not going to have earlier air usually, so you can go bomber first on that one. You also have an air scout on top of the plateau and to assist your bomber if needed. And usually it is needed because bombers don't have radar now, which I always keep forgetting. And usually you should be having this upgrade done already because there's going to be ally overflow or power dumps. The middle player is usually in a position where he doesn't need to economize so much and like streamline the build as the flank player has to. He doesn't need to fight for the plateau, so it's fine if he doesn't micromanage as his economy so hard. And he can give you power to get the gun faster. Now, there's also going to be a fight on top of the plateau, and after you won it, you're going to get reclaim. So this mass stall, as hard as it is now, is not going to be entirely realistic. This engineer will be building both mexes, and I'm going to control K some of these tanks to simulate a tank battle and get some reclaim. There we go. Note how I'm not taking any mass extractor upgrades. You simply cannot afford it, and if you win this plateau and have these 2 mexes, then that's actually as good as having a T2 mix. Plus, you're also making sure the opponent doesn't have these 2 mexes. So that's a lot of benefit you're getting from these 2. Essentially, each of these mexes is going to be worth a T2 mix. Because the enemy doesn't have them, and they're generating extra income, right? Now, after having some anti-air and some RD on top of the plateau, and some engineers, a total of, what is it, 5-6 engineers, that's a realistic number, I'm self-destructing both factories on top, except one, right? And the other one is going to be upgrading. And now the gun upgrade is finished, PD is finished, to ensure that nothing is incoming, but this will of course depend on the situation, right? So how passive is your middle player? How aggressive is your opponent? Does he play plateau-centric or not? These are factors that decide whether you build this PD or not. Getting mass extractor upgrades now, because this is the stage where I'm planning to go for T2. The gun ACU is going to be quite a threat, because most people who lose the plateau on the flank are going to prepare something to get it back. And this is going to be a drop of T2 units or T2 air, usually. And both of that means that they cannot have gun upgrade. And when you have gun upgrade that early, you don't really need units to like assist, right? Your ACU is going to be fine without units if you stay out of range of the enemy. Now you're securing the plateau with point defense and anti-air, and usually you should get around 4 anti-air, stationary anti-air, to make sure that T2 air is not going to hit it as hard. And you should have at least 1 PD covering 50% of the plateau on the top and on the bottom. This way you can really make sure you keep it safe. The reason you want to keep it so safe is that the plateau decides the game. And after like 2-4, kind of depends on your eco, how much reclaim you get, and so on. That's not a real game, remember. This is just a sandbox. You're going to upgrade this factory to T2, and this factory should be building Asylum. And if you're not Aeon, a Parashield, and if you're not UEF either, then you don't have a shield. Well, shit happens, right? And Even Songs, or the equivalent of your faction. And these MMLs are going to be able to stand here on this side and shoot from top to the bottom and hit the core mixes of the base. And later you're going to get T3 on that plateau and get T3 mobile RT and destroy even more. You can also get TML on top of that and T2 stationary RT. And the reason these indirect fire weapons, be it mobile or stationary units, are that strong is that nothing shoots from bottom to top on the plateau, but everything is going to shoot from the bottom, from the top to the bottom, right? So this is a one-sided advantage here. You can kill stuff that's down there, but when the opponent is down there, he cannot kill what's up there. This is how it works. This is one of the few maps where a position actually has a positioning advantage that is not just an eco advantage, it's a real positioning advantage. So that's like your fortress, right? And getting this plateau back can be done with T2 drops, T2 air, and com drops. But if this plateau is well secured, it's going to be a ticking time bomb the enemy will be afraid of. So if you lose the plateau, you have to get really creative to get it back, or somehow support your team on the other side to make up for the disadvantage you have on your side. I guess these are the basics. Note that I'm building the HQ on top of the plateau and the support factory down here. So I'm not going to have T2 for a longer period of time down here. If there's TML, and right now my T2 timing on top of the plateau is usually in between minute 8 and minute 9, so that's kind of late. And if somebody really rushes TML, it could be on this map at minute 6:30 maybe, then you're going to lose your T2 maxes to the enemy TML. And if you're super lucky, you could even lose the land factory that is upgrading on top of here. But for this reason, your middle player should be supporting you with TMD, if there is any TML. And of course, the best way to counter TML is by simply destroying it with air units. So this map is difficult because the build order is very unique and very unforgiving, and it also requires a lot of coordination and team play. I hope this build order helps, and I hope you're not discouraged from the difficulty of the map. See it as a positive challenge and have fun playing Badlands.